Welcome to the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, where there's always another secret.
Greetings, everybody, and welcome back to episode 18 of the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies. Today is November 12th, 2018, and in this episode, we begin our discussion of the second book in Mistborn Era 2, Shadows of Self. I am Bill, and I am joined, as always, by my Edwardian co-hosts, Amy and Jordan. Welcome, guys.
That feels a little weird, but I can see why you did it.
I feel we're finally starting to find the holes.
It fits. Edwardian is the era that Sherlock is in, and this book is very, very Sherlockian. I almost called you Sherlockian.
I just think of the furniture. Edwardian.
It's an era. It's the architecture and the era all coincide.
I don't believe you. I think you're gaslighting me.
Gaslighting also comes from this era, George.
Ah!
He's clever because...
He is. It's true.
All right, well, for those of you who listen to the podcast recordings or watch the videos on YouTube, we want to remind you that it is possible for our listeners to interact with us live via chat as we record each episode at www.twitch.tv/innkeeperstable. We record episodes of the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies every other Monday night, starting at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern. Please join us, take an active part in the discussion, talk to us, let us know that you're there. Right now, sometimes it feels like we're shouting out into the ether and nobody's shouting back. So, shout back.
This one never come back to bite us.
No, it couldn't at all. It's
wonderful. Never.
It's foolproof.
Now, so that y'all know, those of you who've been following, we've unfortunately dropped below the giveaway threshold on Patreon, so we're not going to have a giveaway this week. But hopefully we'll be able to start doing those again soon. We just need a couple more patrons, and we'll be able to start doing that monthly again. So, yeah, we look forward to getting some great prizes out to you, and appreciate y'all listening.
And hey, if you can't support through actual money, spread the word about the podcast. That helps too.
Absolutely. Now, there's another announcement. Brandon just came out with a new book.
Yay!
It came out last week. It's called Skyward, and it is what Brandon is calling his first foray into true science fiction. The closest thing I think we'd have to science fiction that he's done now is probably the Steelheart books, The Reckoners. But this one is like a few centuries in the future, space, alien invasions, that kind of stuff. Takes place on a world, like on a colony. Like there was a fleet. This is intro stuff. This isn't spoilers. But there's basically a fleet that was out and ended up crash landing on this planet. And a couple generations later, that's who the cast of people are. So check it out. It's called Skyward, and I am only a little way into it, but so far it's really good, and I'm looking forward to going a little deeper. But that's not the book that we're here to talk about. The book that we are here to talk about
is much more depressing.
Shadows of Self. Okay, first off, Marcy in this looks like Nicole Kidman to me, and Wax looks a bit like Tom Cruise, and I just think that that's not an accident. There's no way that's an accident.
I mean, it could be an accident.
It's not an accident. There are no accidents.
She makes me think of Helena Bonham Carter, too. Like, her and Nicole Kidman mixed.
Okay.
But he's too tall for Tom Cruise, because Tom Cruise is actually short.
This is true. Anyway, but just the first time I saw that, I was like, that's Nicole Kidman. That's Nicole Kidman on the cover.
Now that you say that, I can see it, but not what occurred to me first time.
But yeah. Before we dive in any deeper, though, we want to remind those of you who may just be tuning in, Right now, we're devoting an episode or 2 or 4 on longer books, Stormlight, to discussing each book's storyline, and we're talking briefly about how it fits into the Cosmere. Once we've made our way all the way through everything, we're going to start devoting episodes to some of the different concepts that span the different series. We're going to talk about what we're calling our aluminum foil hat series, which or theories. The aluminum foil hat makes an appearance in this book. So
It does.
That's where we
because
get the first where they actually talk about that in detail.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have that scene where he goes to the soother parlor and it's like, crap, I forgot my...
Like, forgot my hat.
Well, and later on in the book, Marcy and the sort of squadron.
Yeah, the Connors go in.
The Connors who have their special aluminum bobby hats.
That didn't. I think Wax funded them for that too.
Wax did fund. And they only have a few, but Wax funded them, and there's like a special battalion that uses them. I'm just like, okay, this is
That's
interesting.
cool.
So we're going to talk about our theories. We're going to talk about theories that you send in. So please, if you have any cool theories about what's going on in the Cosmere, send them to us. You can reach us at cosmerestudies@gmail.com. We would love to talk about your theories. Now, usually we go in publication order, but we've decided to stay on Scadrial for the time being to finish out what we've got of Era 2 so far. Unfortunately, Era 2 is not finished, which is driving me crazy because I want to know what happens. But just to remind our listeners, there will be spoilers here for the first Mistborn trilogy, as well as for Alloy of Law, all of which you should definitely read before reading this book.
And maybe some minor ones for Bands of Mourning.
We'll try to avoid spoilers for Bands of Mourning, but
it's hard, though.
There might be a couple, especially because Bands of Mourning was technically written before this book.
It wasn't technically, it was actually written before this book.
I did not know this.
Technically and actually aren't mutually exclusive.
Yeah, no, anyway. It was something that Bill told me earlier, that Brandon couldn't get this book to work, so he just skipped it, went to Bands of Mourning.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so let me just read. Brandon posted in the State of the Sanderson in a few years ago. He said, "The last half of the year was dedicated to Shadows of Self, the new Mistborn novel, and I have a confession to make. I also wrote the sequel." Now, before you start wagging your finger at me for being a robot, there was a really good reason I did what I did. You see, I was having real trouble getting back into Shadows of Self. I'd written the first third of it in 2012 between revisions of A Memory of Light. I was feeling Wheel of Time overload. However, it can be very hard for me to get back into a book or series after a long time away from it. This was another issue with the Rhythmatist sequel, which we're still waiting for, Brandon.
One of these days.
So jumping into Shadows of Self was slow going, and I found it much easier to go write the sequel to refresh myself on the world and characters. That done, I was able to move back to Shadows of Self and finish it up. Because, yeah. So he says, a week or two back, I turned in 2 new Wax and Wayne Mistborn novels that nobody knew were even coming.
Yeah.
So that was fun. But I remember finding out about that, and I was just like, Oh, we're getting 2 of them.
And they were released.
Not 1, but 2.
They were released like right back to back, right?
Like 2 months apart.
It was really close.
That was pretty quick, yeah.
Yeah.
It set a horrible precedent. He should never do stuff like that.
Then we just want more.
Exactly.
But we always want more, so that's,
One little note that Brandon mentioned, he said, amusingly, doing these 2 Mistborn books together totaled only about half as much as a single Stormlight book. So,
those are big.
Half is smaller.
Anyway,
but it's so this is interesting just because the two books are very different in tone. One of the things you pointed out is how this one, like the last one, felt very Western, and then this one's more like a Sherlock Holmes story because the emphasis is way more on the detective work than the exploits.
Whereas, and basically, what you've got is this brilliant gentleman, detective who behaves very differently than he should in society. So
yeah, and then the third one ends up feeling like an Indiana Jones story. So
yeah, a little bit. Although Indiana Jones is a little bit later than, but anyway, that doesn't matter.
Tone,
because because it really matters what the Earth timeline looks like in comparison to Scadrial, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Oh man. But yeah, so
Yes.
yeah. So the beginning of this book, I loved this opening scene because it's basically we get to see Wax before he was Wax.
And it's so cute.
It kind of reminded me of the Mask of Zorro.
Okay.
Before
the newer one.
The Antonio Banderas one, the very first one.
The newer. What was the first one after that one? I'm so behind.
There's the Mask of Zorro, and then there was the Legend of Zorro, or something like. Anyway,
I don't know.
It was like right when he started being trained, and he decides to go out, and he tries to jump and land on the horse, and the horse walks away, and he plummets.
Just like,
and he's trying to be awesome, and he is quite competent, but he hasn't hit legendary status yet, and so
he's still leveling up.
And so he just. And so when he meets Leslie, and she's just like, "You're doing what now?"
It's like you asked the barkeep. You did what?
You talked to the barkeep. I figured he'd know. Everyone in that room belongs to.
The thing I like more than anything else in that whole thing is the fact that he's wearing the cravat. She calls him Mr. Cravat, and he's like, "It's kind of my thing." And at the end,
thing?
Where they leave, he's like, "It helps to have a thing," Yeah. Now, excuse me while I sip my Diet Dr. Pepper.
Well, the thing that's funny about that is, she calls him Mr. Cravat for a bit, and he's like, "Yes, Miss Lacey Pink Garter."
And she's like,
because he'd seen her as a dancing girl before.
So he's like, "Well, if we're gonna call people by their clothing, then there you go."
It was just like. That was a nice pushback. She's like, "We'll never speak of this again." Mr. Cravat. But it's nice to see the legend before there's a legend.
And it's also nice to see that he was happy once before we actually get into the plot.
Oh, this book is so. Especially the ending. It's just a bummer.
Yep.
Like everything about it, But that's
as if the book hadn't been filled with slight bummers throughout the entire thing.
Well, the thing that's weird about it is that this has the feeling, like Brandon has said, this is the first book in a trilogy. There's the standalone Alloy of Law, and then there's a trilogy that follows it. But that said, this still plays like the second book of a trilogy.
This plays like Empire Strikes Back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's the depressing one. It's the one that ends in your... Because, in the first one, you chase them up a tree. Second one, you throw rocks at them. So they're up a tree and they're having rocks thrown at them. And everything is awful and there's no way to escape. And
actually, as I think about it, the original Star Wars trilogy comparison makes a lot of sense because the first one, they don't know if there's going to be a second one, so there has to be a self-contained story.
Fair enough.
With enough that there's something later if they want to go there. Then at that point they know they're going to get to follow it up, so you can afford to be horribly cruel to your characters. And in this case it goes double because Brandon had already written the third one. So he knows exactly how cruel he can be to his characters. Yeah.
But the thing is, there's still a fourth one that's just waiting for us.
Yeah, and who knows what's going to happen there. Anyway,
or when we're gonna get it, because
he said late next year, I believe, in about a year is my understanding.
Are we getting it in a year, or is it going to be?
I think he said it was going to be out at that time. I'd have to double check.
I think it was 2020.
Well,
I think he's planning on finishing it late next year, and then it'll be another year to publish.
Well, either way, we wait a month and we'll know from the state of the Sanderson. So.
Yes, that's true.
Not too far away.
Sanderson. Also known as Kolos Head Munching Day, so
yes,
we'll look forward to that.
But yeah, but everyone has some crap they're going through in this book.
Yeah,
we see Marcy has gotten into the constabulary. She's doing pretty well for herself, but she didn't do it in the prescribed way that
climb the ladder.
Yeah, any sort of long-standing group like the constabulary will have their traditions of how things are supposed to be done. And Maricy's all about changing the way things are done. And
well, and
It's
so
not
is
just
Aradel.
her. Yeah, Aradel's too.
yeah, but it's one of those things. It's Aradel is the one in the position of authority, and so he can do whatever he wants because he already has that respect. Whereas she doesn't, and
and to the point where he had actually gone through everything and then retired, and he came out of retirement, which means he's out of retirement because they wanted him, and so he basically has nothing to lose. He's just like, fine, fire me, okay.
I was already retired, so I can go back to it.
Yeah, and so we're dealing with her problems. Then we have Steris, who we're finally getting a better look at, and
she gets personality. It's amazing.
It really
she levels up in this book
so much. Yeah,
I hated her so much in book 1, and this one I'm just like, wait, is Steris secretly awesome?
I didn't hate her in the first book. I was just very indifferent to her.
Yeah, she just kind of felt meh to me, and I was like, oh. He can usually do better with his female characters, but she really just didn't have much screen time at all. I think that was her biggest problem, is that she just wasn't there for most of it. And
the fact that, she has her own personality. Yeah, everybody has their own personality issues in Brandon's books, and hers just happened to make her more standoffish. I remember, like in high school, I had a friend who was really, really, really shy, but she was also really, 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 really pretty. And people took those two, put them together, and said, oh, she's stuck up.
Oh.
Because she was shy, she didn't talk to a lot of people, and they're thinking, well, she's so pretty and she doesn't talk to people, must mean she's a snob. And Steris sort of suffers from the same sort of thing, because she has her personality quirks, and it's very easy to misinterpret them.
Well, especially with how far ahead she tries to plan for things, because she's not good on the fly. And so if things don't go according to her plan, which, to her credit, she's very good at coming up with contingencies ahead of time.
Yes, she is.
Yeah, in book 3, I think you find even more insane examples of her contingency plans.
Yeah, where she now has more experience with how crazy things are going to get.
Yeah.
But like in this one, where she's planning, she's like, oh, well, who is going to raise a fuss at the wedding? Who is going to make trouble, because it's going to happen. I want to plan who it is so we know how to handle it. So I picked
the lesser one of it, so it's less of a problem.
Well,
and what is it like? When they're in they're going to the tower for the ball, or what was it? And she plans to wear dark undergarments because she knows that he's going to want to not wait in line. So she doesn't want her underwear being visible to everybody. So she wears dark underwear. So when he flies them up, which he's going to do, she's like, he's going to do it. It's just going to happen. So she plans for stuff like that. And I think Wax notices she wears sensible shoes too. Like her shoes are on her feet firmly, so she's not going to lose her shoes.
Well, like in the first book, she's talking about everything's planned and proper, and it makes it look like she's doing this because she's a snob, because she's doing this for appearances and because she wants everyone to think well of. And in all honesty, it's because it's so she won't freak out.
Well, and it is so on some level because she wants people to think well of her. One of the things that Wax talks about is her political positions are very calculated of what is expected of her. But that's not because she's insincere. It's because she doesn't understand the social rules, but she understands what they are. And so she just says, okay, this is expected of me. Boom. I'll do that.
It's not so much she wants them to think well of her as she doesn't want them to think poorly of her.
Yeah.
And those are two very, very different things. Because one is almost built on a sort of fear, which and so she prepares for that because she doesn't want to mess things up.
Yeah.
And it makes her more endearing.
Well, and especially the chapter after the big kerfuffle at the ball, where it's just her and Wayne, and she's trying to ingratiate herself to Wayne, and Wayne's frankly a jerk to her. And
he is, yeah.
It's the part of Wayne that we didn't get to see as much in the previous one, where there is a darker side to him.
Oh yeah.
And he's
and
just
part of that's
mean
because
to her.
Wayne's already decided that Marcy is perfect for Wax, and Ceres's big sin is she's not Marcy.
Yeah,
and she's not Leslie.
And she's not Leslie.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, you're right. It is one of the crueler sides of Wayne that we see.
But it's also,
and it's not because he's intentionally cruel. It's just, again, he doesn't quite understand Ceres, and he doesn't realize how cruel he's being.
Yeah. That's the biggest thing, is he unpersons her a bit in his mind.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think I did the same thing reading the first book, because she's written as such a flat and shallow character.
It's appropriate, Bill, that you should agree with Wayne so much in this regard, because Wayne butchers the English language, and this was my favorite line of the book, where he butchers the English language and then brings up past participle tenses and stuff, and Wax is just like, your understanding of the English language confounds me, and he just smiles and he's like, ain't nobody what knows the cow better than the butcher, Wax. And then later on that gets quoted by Bleeder.
Comes back and
it's just like, that was a fun line! You ruined it! It's like Ultron and I got no strings! It's horrible now!
Oh, that song is horrifying now.
Although Wayne has his problems as well.
Speaking of fun lines, there is one back at the prologue that I do kind of love. The moment that he has with Leslie, where she's got the gun on him, and she's basically betrayed him at this point. And the only thing he says, he looks at her and he says, "I still think your legs are pretty." And she gives him this look like, I'm about to shoot you in the face, and that's what you give me to save your life? And then she sort of rolls her eyes and caps everybody else. And it's just, it does such a great job of defining their relationship.
Mm-hmm.
They have this joking, slightly incredulous banter playing off each other. And just the fact that Wax is so incredibly sincere in that moment. And so...
but Leslie is depressing.
Oh, Leslie. But speaking of depressing, we were talking about Wayne just a little bit ago. Let's talk about Wayne's story here, because it is heartbreaking.
Yeah, his penance that he does.
Yes, the penance that he doesn't have to do.
Mm-hmm.
This is entirely of his own free will, because he this is a man who can't even hold a gun. Can't even hold a bullet sometimes.
Yeah, a bullet makes him shaky sometimes.
It makes his hands tremble because he's so broken over what he did. And he's doing everything he can, every moment of his life, to atone for that. And he talks about, he has his, most of the time he's up. But then he just has these moments where he has to try and live with himself. And
I think and he has it like the first of every month is when he goes and does it. So he has a set day that he does it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he sends money to the daughter of the man that he killed, and he goes through what he refers to as his 3 trials.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like a quest that he's set for himself each month.
Well, and that's part of what makes that scene so powerful, is him breaking into the university is very entertaining. Because it's so Wayne how he does it, and how he views everything, and how he views the people he's working with. And then he finally gets in, and then suddenly it mood whiplashes you, and you're just like, oh, but he was so nice to the little street urchins outside.
Mm-hmm. And it's just... You understand where the daughter is coming from, and why she behaves the way she does towards Wayne. But at the same time, because you know Wayne and you understand how truly sincere he is, it just breaks your heart.
Well, and it makes perfect sense because it's one of those situations where it's true that in any just world, Wayne will never be forgiven for what he did. Mm-hmm. It's also true that Wayne is trying his hardest. And but you can understand it on both sides, and it just sucks.
It's that balance between justice and mercy.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact, like, she is knowingly cruel to him, again, you understand why.
Yeah.
But you wish it wasn't so.
Mm-hmm.
And just that is a mood whiplash scene that Brandon put in that just blew me away.
Yeah.
At least Milan was fun.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, Milan. So we have the return of a character that we saw in Arrow 1 briefly.
Mm-hmm.
And first off, I love that the name that she gives them is Milan because it has this sort of exotic feel. You know, for us, Milan is a city in Italy. And, you know, she shows up as this sort of femme fatale and it just fits.
Yeah.
And then we find out, oh no, it's Milan. It's the Khandra that was friends with Tensoon in Hero of Ages.
And she was a little bit of a rebel. Like, her generation was a little bit pushing it the norms and doesn't want to conform as much.
She was from the 8th generation, is that right?
Oh, something like that. I can't remember exactly. I know Tensoon was 3rd,
Tensoon was 3rd. And I think she was from the 8th.
Yeah.
But yeah, she was the one who helped him out during all his exciting moments.
All those problems.
Well, the thing that's interesting about her is, even though she's from a long time ago, she's still one of the newer Khandra as far as how she lives her life. And she talks about that, how, my generation, we never really did missions the way the older generations did.
Well, and when Wax talks to Tensoon later, he talks about, Tensoon mentions that the younger generations, very few of them ever even return to the homeland. Very rarely do they come back.
Yeah, it's more like going to do a religious thing and then coming back and doing your normal stuff.
But it's just, it's not a holy place to them, really.
Yeah, because it makes sense. Because, I mean, think about any sort of... We're all Americans here. Like, as time goes on, the wars that occurred that would be holy ground to people who lived through that stuff, it's gone away. Think of something like 9/11, which for people who are about our age was a formative moment. Like, to my little brother, it's just a thing that happened in the past. He wasn't cognizant when it occurred.
Well, but Milan was there.
Yeah, but
she didn't witness most of it.
Yeah, she knew something was wrong. And she didn't like it. But she wasn't out there serving the way Tensoon was.
Right.
And so to a lot of them, and they mentioned that a lot of them didn't. And so it's interesting. And it's what makes Bleeder so interesting as a Khandra villain, where she was the Lord Ruler's personal Khandra.
Yeah.
Well, and then she basically transferred that fanatical loyalty to Harmony.
Well, and
then he pushed her too far.
Well, and that's the thing that's interesting about the broken pedestal idea, where she's a fanatic. That's her personality, and so she just transferred. Okay, well, he's the new Lord Ruler essentially, so I'll just serve him fanatically. And the moment that it comes into conflict, what she thinks is right versus what Harmony thinks is right. And I'm sure she, like, at the end, Milan makes the sort of the impassioned speech to Marcy is like, do you understand how hard it is to be God? Like, where you have to balance out all this cosmic calculus, and sort of puts her in her place a little bit. I'm willing to bet that's the exact type of speech that Bleeder would have given back before she turned. But then finally she reaches a thing where she thinks, no, we can't do this. This is wrong. And
I think a big part of what broke her was the fact that she was in love with Wax.
Exactly.
Yes.
And then it was Well, now you have to pretend to die and break his heart.
Have him kill you.
Yeah, and so he will go back and do what he needs to do, and she just like, I don't want to.
Do we know that was what he commanded her to do? Because he was trying to get him back to the.
I think that's
city.
what it was.
I think he was trying to get him back, and she wouldn't send him back, and so he was basically like, okay, then
I'm going to force your hand.
I have to take you out of the equation.
Yeah, and so I don't think that Harmony's plan wasn't to use Bloody Tan. I don't think.
I'm not sure.
But it's how it worked out.
Exactly.
Yeah. In fact, I think I'm not positive, but I sort of got the impression that he actually took direct control of her at that last moment.
Yeah, that would.
I'm not positive, but that was sort of the impression that I got, which is why she goes around with only one spike. Because she's like, I will not let this happen again.
Yeah, because she's really upset when the second spike goes back in.
Oh gosh, yes.
That's traumatic.
And then there's the fun of she's a hemalurgy master.
Yeah.
And has decided to break the game.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I hadn't realized before this book that Chandra could be granted ferrochemy and allomancy through hemalurgy.
Well, and that's the thing is we know so little about what hemalurgy can do, but it's theorized by Chris that it's the most versatile of all the magic systems.
Well, Chris is talking about how you can use it to blend magics, and she, in the Ars Arcanum, she's like, she compares it to Roshar because you're using two different surges with the Knights Radiant, and just talking about how this is interesting and this, and suddenly you look at that and you're like, oh, Brandon, what do you have in mind?
Well, and the thing is,
it's scary.
Well, because it has some of because she compares allomancy to the magic of Cell, where it's form based, because you eat metal A, it does thing B, and your spirit web has to be attuned to it. And so you just start going through, and then you say, okay, well, what limits hemalurgy? Well, there's the metal you use, there's where you stick it into someone, there's how fresh it is, what connections they have. Like
there's who it was used to kill.
Yeah. Well, and it can steal things that aren't even inherently magical in nature. Because it just steals basic human sapience and basic human strength. And that's how we make Koloss and Chandra. And so it's one of these...
And a new creation that she's made.
Yeah.
In the tunnels, there were...
The Chimera, apparently, is what they're called.
Oh, is that what they're called?
I found it on the Coppermind, so I assume they have it somewhere.
It uses a single hemalurgic spike.
But it looks like it's probably the Trell metal.
Yeah. The Chandra used 2, the original Koloss used 4, and the Steel Inquisitors used a bazillion. So...
I think that's the technical number. I think you're right.
Yes, bazillion.
1 bazillion.
Let me see if I can find out about those creatures.
They're just freaky.
Oh, those things... Although that was cool where they were built to fight Wax, and Tensoon's all... No, you need to run. These things are built to fight you. And he's like, hell I will.
It's like, no.
He's like, I think you forgot that I am broken as all get out with my combo.
That I am Wax. And, but yeah.
I'm Harmony's sword.
Yeah.
That was the thing is, they refer to... she calls him Harmony's hands, and he's just like, I am not Harmony's hands. I'm his sword.
And that's such a heartbreaking line right before he...
Take her out,
Just like, I wish you hadn't said that. This is gonna suck for you now. I can't decide if this is more depressing on the first read, where it's the sudden gut punch of the reveal at the end, or the second read where it's coming.
You see it coming.
Well, this was a hard book for me to read. I kept putting it off. I was like, I don't want to read. Oh no, I'll do this other thing that I need to do. And I had forgotten who Leslie had been. I knew she was a Khandra, but I couldn't remember which Khandra. And then as I was getting further, I was like, oh, that's who it is. And I was like, oh, because I thought it was Melan for a while, and I was like, but this doesn't feel quite right. And as I was reading it, I'm like, well, who else could it be? And then I was too absorbed keeping up with everything else, and then it clicked pretty close to the end again, and that was that.
So speaking of the fights and the titles and everything, then they get back to the pits of Hathsin, and we get to see what the pits of Hathsin look like now, because the crystals and the ADM geodes aren't there anymore.
Mm-hmm. It's all smooth, so it doesn't cut you up.
Mm-hmm.
And Harmony made sure they could. There's all the fungus, and no one would get lost.
I like that little touch. He's like, I don't want anybody to be stuck here in the dark again. Mm-hmm. And that's just a nice nod to his friend Kelsier.
Well, that entire area was nothing but, it's like, here's the cave of fan service. It's like, okay, to your left you have the critic Shah. To the right you will see the area where Tensoon was imprisoned. Please pick up your Sunni cubs at the gate.
Sunni cubs. I forgot about Sunni cubs.
I totally want to make one now. Crap.
Do it.
Okay, I'll figure out how.
Do it.
But, okay, so I know Tensoon hates being commercialized, which,
absolutely.
Can you imagine, like, wouldn't you hate it if, like, imagine some of these people, like Ben Franklin, it's like, why is my face on the side of this plumbing service van? Like, you probably wouldn't be comfortable with it, but at the same time, with his role as in their iconography as the Ascendant Warrior's Guardian, what a perfect little thing to give tiny little kids. It's like, here's your guardian. Like, it's so adorably cute. Oh. And it's unfortunate because it's the gruffest of all the Khandra who is now being cuddled at night by small children.
Well, it's a nice play on the teddy bear.
Yeah.
And so just the timing's perfect again. And let's just find this thing that will protect our kids. And
all I can think of now is that one image of the person who's like tickling the tiny bat, and it's just like, no, stop tickling me. I am the night.
Yep. But yeah, just the cave down below. Now, one thing I've noticed, they talk about, and this might be, no, this isn't a spoiler because it's not actually even in the book. Really, is the Marrowill flowers.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they mentioned them.
The flowers that were basically modeled after the ones in Mare's picture.
Yeah, the one that she did.
And the fact that they grow only in the field of origination. Mm-hmm. That reminds me of the Tears of Edgeley in Warbreaker. Because they only grow around Titalir.
Yeah.
And
we don't know exactly what inspires them to grow.
But the fact that they're called the Tears of Edgeley in Warbreaker, and Edgeley is the vessel for endowment, I'm wondering if the Marrowill flowers are sort of a similar thing on Scadrial, because I suspect that's where, like, somewhere in the vicinity is where Harmony's singularity is Shard Pool.
Wasn't there in one of the, not epigrams, but the in-between chapters that are the broadsheets, there's a story in one of them where not the Almancer Jack. Yeah, but in the same sheets as the Almancer Jack stories. I swear there's a time where it's like, I normally wouldn't publish this, but this is from this lady, and she found this pool of this shimmering, and it's just like, did you find a singularity? Is that what this is? Wait, what's there? What's there?
Is that in this one, or is it the next one?
It's in this one.
It's on the broadsheet.
She sees something at the pool. It's like a creature, and
wait, it was some random long story in there.
Was that the visitors from another world?
I think.
Or is that or am I mixing them up?
No, I think that's right.
Which makes sense because world hoppers travel through singularities to get from the physical realm to the cognitive realm.
Yeah.
I'm gonna flip through the broadsheets now because I gotta find it.
In fact, was it Hoyd? Or did she talk about a man with white hair? Or
I don't remember that. I know that Hoyd is the driver.
Oh, that's right. That's where he was in this. Because
and like Wayne hops up and talks to him when is hanging out with Hoyd. We don't hear any of that conversation.
Right.
When Wax is putting in the earring and talking to Harmony.
Right. Oh, Wax's conversations with Harmony.
Yes.
It's nice to see Stays Out again.
Oh, there's the Sunni pups. Sorry, I found them.
It's okay.
They're so cute. Oh my goodness.
Anyway.
I will keep looking.
Jordan, are you looking for something?
I was looking to see, because it had a description of it, and this was something I was obsessed with, and I'm just like, what is this thing? Some people theorized, based on the description, that it was a Parshendi.
Okay.
So
interesting.
It's a very vague description, though. It was so
right.
like, maybe, I don't know. But anyway.
And there's a story by Gentleman Jack, and he's someone thinks that he's Wax, and he's like, no, of course I'm not Wax.
No, I'm way too cool for him. And you're just like, okay.
He's trying to be Wax. He's copying Wax. All right.
Criminal there too, but whatever. Anyway.
Oh, sorry, something else that was just a random character moment when Bleeder tells him, I'm gonna kill your father. And he's like, does he mean Lord Harms? Okay, I'm gonna go check on Lord Harms. And it's just like, oh, Lord Harms.
He's so cute. He is totally fanboying Wax. He's like, oh, let's go get him. And he's got the gun and stuff. He's like, let's do this. He's all pumped up for it.
He's basically sort of midlife crisis. Come on, let's go. Yeah,
Well, and he's so the fake gentleman adventurer, the way he blusters about it.
Yep.
And he points the gun at Wax, and Wax is like, okay, really hope there wasn't one in the chamber because he forgot to load the magazine.
He's like, let's not shoot.
Let's not point at me. It would suck if I died to my father-in-law because he's just weird.
That would really put a damper on the marriage.
Yeah. Oh, I found the visitors from the other world thing.
Okay, can you find the description of the creature?
So it says, as twilight struck early, as it was, Savage saw a hunched figure by the pool. Just a shadow, really, she said. Piercing eyes and a face like some otherworldly beast from one of those hideous pulp stories. I regret to say I hadn't, so she didn't interact with it.
Okay. What did the pool look like?
Most perfect blue, fed by the melting snows of the heights. So it's a blue pool, and there was somebody with a freaky face.
Could be a singularity.
It's possible.
I didn't look at that.
Or a former singularity. That's the other thing, is we don't know what happened to 80's pool and to Laras's pool.
Well, so it's implied through stuff in Secret History, which we haven't covered yet, so I don't want to go too far. Right. But it's implied that when Kelsier went and destroyed the pits, that it destabilized that, because we know his singularity
we knew that
was there.
Right.
So doing that somehow disturbed the shard pool as well.
Right, but we don't know exactly what. This is 300 years later.
Oh,
we don't know what's
we don't know, and so my gut it's just one of those tells me his is probably gone.
What I'm saying is, even if it's empty, that doesn't mean that there's not something special about that place still.
Yeah, and I mean the fact that she said that it was like a shadow might have just been it was just a cognitive shadow or something that it wasn't physically there.
It could have been a spren. We don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, actually, sorry. I need to change gears. You just reminded me of something I forgot I wanted to bring up. So, spren. This actually ties into this book.
Okay.
Or I think it does.
I'm intrigued.
So whenever wind spren start seeing things moving in the air, they start following it around, and we see Syl getting distracted all the time and playing with the wind spren. In this book, the way he describes the mist swirling about when people start burning and doing stuff, it reminds me very much of how the spren react. And and I'd never made this connection before. And I think there's something sympathetic going on between the Mists and Allomancers that's similar. It's not a bond the way it is with...
Well, and I think that the Mists represent the cognitive aspect.
Yeah. And so it's
the metals are the physical aspect, and I think that the shard pools are the spiritual aspect. And the Mists themselves...
I thought gas was typically the spiritual aspect.
I don't think so.
Coppermine, to the rescue! Romantic theory. I'll look it up. I'll figure it out.
I'm pretty sure that just because it's more of a pure... And I think they use the spiritual to cross over into the cognitive.
I can see an argument for either way, so I don't feel confident.
I could be remembering wrong, but I think that's what I read somewhere. So we'll have a reader email us and let us know exactly what we're saying wrong.
Obviously, it's this thing over here. How did you not know it?
Exactly.
It's right there. So
that's cosmerestudies@gmail.com.
Please tell us the answer. It'd be great.
Tell us if you know. All right, so Bleeder, her plan. You know, she was talking about because she's basically trying to bring down Harmony, right? And so she has essentially a four-pronged attack, where she cuts out the tongue of Harmony. Was that the
eyes, ears, and mouth? Yeah, the
tongue. But the tongue, that's the politicians, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
The government. And then there's the eyes of Harmony.
That was a priest.
That was the priest. And then the ears of Harmony are the Khandra.
The thing that's interesting, she says she wants to blind him. Well, all she does is stab through one priest of survivorism, not even of pathism. But the thing that's interesting is because what she's trying to do is start a religious war.
Yes.
Which would, in effect, blind not him, but the followers, because they would be in a rage.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was interesting. And cutting out the tongue of a guy who's actually kind of a minor figure. Like that isn't actually silencing them, but the effect makes it so that no one's listening to government officials.
Right.
Because they're all terrified and freaked out.
Well, to the point where the quote governor was supposed to give a speech, but it was supposed to be the wrong speech, and it was supposed to end up having the opposite reaction and riling the crowd up.
And have everybody go cause a revolution.
Yeah, and then she commits, mild genocide against her own people.
Yeah. Well, is it permanent, though?
I mean,
she just had them... Or was she just trying to get it so they couldn't walk around the city freely? Because did the people actually kill them, or did they just...
I think it's sort of implied that was her plan.
She was taking them out of the equation, is what she was doing.
Yeah.
I don't think she was planning to do any sort of genocide, but she was trying to basically take them away as a tool of Harmony.
Yeah, hamstring them, or whatever term you'd like to use.
Yeah, and first of all, the part of me that appreciates a good villainous plan, I'm like, man, that is thorough.
Yeah, and the way she's like, oh no, I don't want this person to be watching that part, so I need to make sure they're redirected over here. And such smooth transitions in misdirects and smoke and mirrors and whatever else
Well, and it takes them a while, but I like how Wax at the end starts to figure out, no, this is all a distraction. Look at this. It's a conveniently placed puzzle that almost makes sense. This is tailor-made for me.
And he's like, wait, and it makes sure that I'm busy over here. And this is too perfect.
There's
what is it? And the Chimera or whatever they are only come after them when they leave the one room where they're supposed to be figuring out the puzzle. Like, wait, we didn't do what she wanted, so she's sending them after us.
That's the other thing that's really spooky about her, is she gives herself a power that isn't based in anything we've seen here in Scadrial. She's able to talk to him through the ring. We've only seen Ruin do that.
Yep.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
So she's somehow able to use Heave Allergy to give herself a power we've only seen a shard itself have.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is something that I read about when I was looking through and diving too deep into the Coppermind. Somebody, when they were at a book signing, went to Brandon and they were asking him about trowel and trellism and the stuff behind it. Brandon said, "I will give you a hint in what I write in your book." He wrote only 3 words: rust and ruin. Is rust something? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Now, see, now, Jordan's gonna walk in, and I'm gonna have like pictures on the wall and red strings tied to each other.
What are you talking about? That's never happened. Twice.
Listen, Diablo boy.
For those of you who don't know, I had a crazy theory earlier, and it was fun.
I still haven't completely written it off. I partly because I want it to be true. I think it's going to be in DLC. I am holding out hope.
Hashtag Diablo and Smash. Anyway,
But yeah, but she's using a different metal for her spikes that she's using on herself.
Yeah.
That even Harmony doesn't recognize.
But that's the thing. It looks like there are rust-colored spots.
Well, and so we
on
think,
the spikes.
I think we can confirm that that metal is Trellium, right?
Mm-hmm.
I
mean, it's a fair conclusion, I think.
Yeah, but we haven't seen her. We haven't seen the people using these things to use multiple different spikes. We've just seen the one spike. But as we know with hemalurgy, one type of spike, depending where you stab yourself, does different things.
We've seen more than one spike, because there was the one that was in the Chimera.
Yeah.
And then there was the one that was in her.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but what kind of a clue is that, Brandon? Come on.
Ruin. Well, because the thing is, you would think rust would be tied to ruin. Because it's decay.
Although somebody has posited that perhaps it's change. Perhaps that's the thing is change or adaptation. Because technically oxidation isn't necessarily just a decay. It's a transition from one material to another.
Yeah.
But, again, this is the aluminum foil hat theory that's just going all over the place.
Therefore, Half-Life 3 confirmed.
Half-Life 4 confirmed.
Oh my goodness. Next level.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We skipped it.
Makes sense. Valve can't count to 3.
Okay, so let's take a step back and talk a little bit about Wayne and just some of the perspectives that we've seen him in, because he steps into his roles so much.
What's interesting in this one is he actually, in a lot of spots, isn't stepping into a role, and it's his opinion. And he actually doesn't really disagree much with the mob. He's kind of... He agrees with them. Mm-hmm. And I find that he still does his job. But it's a very interesting thing where he's in the middle of the mob. It's like, well, that's a lot of good points. And they're like, wait a minute, aren't you that guy with wax?
I think he was sort of stepping into a role in that, though, because he's trying to blend in with the mob.
Mm-hmm.
And
so the thing that makes me push towards he actually feels a lot of these same things is after he runs from the mob, there's a line about him. He's like, he doesn't know exactly where he lines up on these arguments. He's like, but he's probably going to side with the people who aren't trying to burn down the city.
Mm-hmm. But that's the thing is, I think that to a degree, he you're right, but I think there is also a degree of him stepping into a role to blend in with the mob. I think that was part of it. That was the impression that I got.
Well, there's also his background too. He's not a noble.
Right.
So he would have had more life experience as a kid that they would have had, to an extent. So. Right.
Well, and that's the cool thing about Wayne is he's plays both sides of the fence, and he doesn't completely do it insincerely. He's been on both sides he's been on both sides of the law for sure.
Yeah.
And so it's one of these things where I think he understands their arguments, but much like Wax at the end of Alloy of Law talking to Miles. It's like, yeah, things are bad right now. Mm-hmm. Maybe we don't burn the city down over it. Maybe we do something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I loved the constant parallels drawn between that night and the night Kelsier's plan went into effect.
Uh-huh. Oh, it was they kept popping up.
Suits line, where he's just like, go ahead and try and pretend you wouldn't have strung up the survivors crew in the square. It's just like, ooh, Suit playing with fire here.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the thing is, Wax is a man who, he's a law keeper. The thing is, the laws that he's keeping are different than the laws that were in effect back then.
Yeah.
And so it's just, so it's one of those, you can't really tell what he would have done.
No. And that's what's so juicy about that line is Wax can't dismiss it out of hand.
Yep.
Because there is definitely a ring of truth to that statement. And you know what? I actually agree with Suit on this. Given the era he would have grown up in, and he would have grown up as a noble, he would have grown up in a society that was sort of callous towards the needs of the Ska. He probably would have. He probably would have been still a law and order guy and probably would have been on the side of the Lord Ruler.
Possibly, except that, he grew up in a noble society and he rebelled against it in this situation.
Yeah, but the difference there is he wouldn't have been surrounded by anyone who agreed with him, and he could go out into the roughs and become a hero. There were no heroes in the final Empire.
Elend.
Yeah, that
was after.
Yeah, that was after. That was after the Revolution. No one viewed him as a hero until even after the Revolution. No one viewed him.
But what I'm saying is, I see him sort of leaning that way. I still see him being leaning towards okay, there's something wrong. We need to fix it from within.
That's the law and order. That's the law and order part, though. I see him saying, "I'm going to fix it from within," but with an authority figure like the Lord Ruler, I don't see Wax at a certain point dealing with the actual society because it's too big for him. He doesn't tend to like to deal with societal stuff.
I don't know.
And there's a big difference between having an authoritative figure like the Lord Ruler and a democracy where there's officials
I see a lot of parallels between Wax and Elend, and so I'm not entirely convinced.
I can see that too.
The thing, and so for me, this is where I find it really juicy. One of Brandon's favorite things is talking about Kelsier is how you change the circumstances a little bit, and Kelsier's the bad guy of his story. And so I like drawing the same comparison with a different character, Wax, but it's one of those, you get a slightly different change of circumstance, and he could be the bad guy as well.
Perhaps, except that again, I see Wax as more of an idealist, and so but
he has a cravat.
He does have a cravat, and
that's a thing.
He also has a duster.
Yeah, so
he has a mist duster.
I wanted one. It would look stupid, but I want one.
Yeah, I would love to have a duster, but I would have absolutely nowhere to wear it.
Around the house to make yourself happy.
On Halloween, right?
I
wear my Ghostbusters jacket for similar reasons.
So we were talking about Wayne, though. When he steps into the role of this scientist.
Yeah, the professor.
And he's confronted at the party. First off, I love the parallel because it reminded me very much of the whole Tesla versus Edison controversy.
Yes. I picked that up too.
Uh-huh.
My husband loves watching stuff about Tesla, so I know a little bit about Tesla.
Oh, yeah. And so, but it was interesting because suddenly Wayne's just like,
oh, no.
Because Wayne usually steps into a type, into sort of a character that he builds up in his head and develops. This is where he was impersonating somebody who already exists.
Yep, and he had to have Marasi look up stuff about it and whatever else. And he ends up doing a speed bubble, I think, so she can look something up for him because he's like, wait, I don't know how to answer about this theory. And she's like, okay. She looks it up, and then he chases some guy off so he doesn't have to talk to him more.
But the thing that I love is that it comes back at the end.
Yeah.
Where he meets her as himself.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, wait,
oh, your dad's so cool.
And she's just like, this is the first time anybody's ever acknowledged that her father was the actual inventor. And it changes her life.
Mm-hmm.
And
especially because he hooks her up with an angel investor.
Yeah, and, Wayne says, do you need money? And she just sort of gives him this look like, Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's
what?
do this. Okay.
Am I actually hearing this? What?
Is this real life? It's just great. It's a nice little moment.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Should we talk about the terrorist village? We didn't get to that at all.
We should talk about the terrorist village.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. So that was an interesting moment. I can't remember. It was pretty early on, and Wax was trying to figure out who had killed the governor's brother.
Because he was convinced it was a steel runner.
Right.
Yeah, because that was all the deaths and everything else, and he's like, somebody would have had to move fast, and that wouldn't have been a speed bubble. It would have been Farukamist.
And so he goes somewhere that he never likes to go.
Yeah.
First of it's interesting. The village itself. It's sort of like if Central Park was being owned by the Amish.
Have you guys seen the movie The Village by M. Night Shyamalan?
Yes.
I have not.
It reminds me of that. Well, spoiler. It reminds me of that too.
But where he walks up and he's like, there shouldn't be a wooden cabin in the middle of
the middle of
Elendel.
Elendel. Yeah, this is just not.
And yet,
work.
There it was.
There it is.
And it's really interesting because suddenly you learn more about Wax from this, because all we've seen of him is his father's side of the family.
Mm-hmm.
You've only seen the Ladrian side, and suddenly you see his mother's side, and his grandmother, who is the leader of these terrorists. It's got a little bit of a Native American feel to it as well.
Yeah, it did. I got that vibe.
Just this ancient tribal beliefs almost.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it's very interesting how they've adopted a lot of Sazed's personality as far as they want to be this peaceful, apart from the world, studious group, but at the same time, as soon as he walks in, the brute squad comes out in a literal sense, and they're just like, what are you doing here? And
we police ourselves. You don't need to be here.
Yeah, and he's just like, okay, whatever. I'm just.
But then his grandmother steps up and she's like, he has a place here.
He's with me.
She's like, he actually has more terrorist blood in him than most here. And but again, he sort of rejected this aspect of himself.
Mm-hmm.
It was really interesting because it talks about how he went and he spent, was it a year or two?
It was a year. It was a year. That was all his father would concede as a year.
Yeah, so he went and he spent a year there and lived among them and sort of learned about it, and ended up rejecting it after that point. You hear a lot of these stories where somebody goes to their ancient heritage and stays for a year and adopts it, and that becomes who they are. And in this one, he pushed it away and he actually kept his noble heritage. I mean, he went out to the roughs, but that wasn't the terrorist aspect of him. That was him rejecting the noble culture, but the noble breeding he kept.
I think, don't we find out a big chunk of the reason why he didn't want to embrace the terrorist culture in books.
Yeah, we find out a lot more in the next book.
A lot more. And I keep wanting to talk about that. And I don't remember all the details either. So I'm like, wait, no, you can't talk about that or that or that.
No, but it's also...
We'll talk about it soon.
The other thing that's interesting about it is how she's like, that's not, like, you keep clinging to this old idea of me. That's not me. And he's like, yeah, mm-hmm. And so you're going to tell me about this or not? And just sort of, he's just not having any of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, when he lives there, he's not allowed to do any allomancy at all. Like, they think of it as dirty, almost, kind of.
Mm-hmm. Well, I like what she says.
It's not the allomancy; it's the mixture of the two that they consider dirty. I think they said.
It was the mixture.
Yeah,
is it?
They specifically talk about that
because she talks about the danger of it is the danger of creating another Lord Ruler.
Oh, is that what it was?
Which does make sense if you remember the terrorists were hunted down by the Lord Ruler.
So that this would be avoided, yeah.
Exactly. Because he wanted to be... And then, and also you see individuals like Miles Hundred Lives.
Mm-hmm.
And just how powerful
that
Twinborn can be, because you're mixing these two different magic systems, and it creates something more powerful than either of them on its own.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things, you have a point, but at the same time, cloistering yourselves up isn't doing much good for anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, well, we need to start wrapping up, so I hate talking about this, but this is seriously one of the most heartbreaking twists Brandon has ever written, I feel like, is when she takes off the mask and he sees Leslie's face. And for a while, he's thinking, you dug up her body. You know, he's just thinking she went and dug up the corpse of this woman so that she can manipulate him. And that in and of itself seems horrific enough.
Yeah.
And then he realizes it's actually her, and it was always her.
And I shot her and killed her again.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, and you just see his relationship with Harmony shatter as that hemalurgic bullet enters her. And he's just, it breaks him. It destroys him.
Mm-hmm.
Also, that's just a terrifying phrase. Hemalurgic bullet.
Yeah. Well, now, okay, the concept of that was brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
Where he's just like, okay, I have this earring that's a hemalurgic spike. He gives it to Renette because Renette is awesome. And he says, I want you to make a bullet out of this for me.
Yeah.
And he puts it into Vindication and puts it into one of the special chambers. Because
so sure he gets
this is
the right
one
bullet.
shot. And
well,
and she doesn't even dodge it because she's like,
it's a
well,
bullet.
she thinks it's a bullet.
Yeah.
And then she realizes and she starts screaming.
Yeah.
And ends up just saying no. And they set up earlier that Kandra have found a way to destroy themselves. Yeah.
Yeah,
and she does it.
It's also interesting because this was one of those things I like when you try. I predicted this plot twist. This is one of the ones I got, and I got it fairly early on that he made his earring into a bullet. Because he suddenly stopped having the earring in, and he tries to play it off as because he's listening to he doesn't want Bleeder. Either he doesn't want to listen to Bleeder, or he doesn't want to listen.
I actually picked up on that one too.
Yeah, he doesn't want to listen.
I don't
to
remember.
Harmony.
I don't think I did. I don't remember for sure, but I don't think I did, and I didn't pick up on it this time again because I was too focused on.
This was one of the ones I'm like, okay, I got this one.
But
never saw Vin coming, but
the scene that was really cool after this, though, because again, he's killed the woman that he's just the woman. She is the woman, and being back to Sherlock, this is the woman. And but it just rips him up inside. But then you see the scene where Steris sits down next to him.
Oh yeah, I'm turned to that page and
it's just it's a heartbreaking moment, and then that little scene is just this little bit of light that you see, and it's heartwarming at a time where your emotions are already raw, and you love Steris for it.
Yeah, there's no words that you can say that will help, and so.
But she's there, and she just lets him grieve.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing that's interesting about the whole lead up to him shooting her is the fact that the bullet was his spike, so he was not having any conversations with Sazed from basically for the final 2/3 of the book. I
think he had one little moment where he wanted to ask him something, and he's like, "Oh wait, I don't have the earring," and then it moves on.
Well, especially because when he wanted to ask Sazed, is she telling the truth? Is this true? Mm-hmm. And he couldn't because
earring's gone.
It's one of those things you're like, if he had been able to talk to Sazed, would Sazed have been able to get him through that moment?
Right.
But because he wasn't, he was slowly turning against Harmony, where he's just like, what's the point of a god if he can't prevent this type of stuff?
Yeah, and that was what she was saying to him as well.
Yeah, and so it starts to get to him because at that point he's no longer having those conversations where essentially suddenly she was able to sort of filibuster and Sazed isn't getting his piece in, and then the reveal happens and you're just like, oh no.
Yeah.
It's what made like that 2 months before the next book came out torturous. Because you're just like, no, what's going on? Everything's broken. It's horrible.
Of course, then it's even worse at the end of the next one, and we still don't have the next book. Brandon! Anyway, okay, so Heartbreak ending, amazing ending, but who the heck is Trell?
You're yelling.
Who is Trell?
We apologize for your eardrums.
I'm sorry. I will play with the levels as I'm editing the thing together. But who the heck is Trell? Come on.
One of my crazy guess is Odium, but I don't know.
See, and I don't think it's Odium. I think it's someone else.
It feels too obvious, but that's all that I can think of at the moment. I'm
so
not great with
here's my logic on who Trell is. I think Odium is impossible, actually, because Brandon didn't expect to even write these books, and he had already had the Stormlight Archive planned out, and it doesn't feel to me like he would have planned for Odium to be on Scadrial when he's also planning for him to do important stuff in the Stormlight Archive.
But wasn't Odium Stormlight's before this?
Stormlight is concurrent.
It's concurrent.
Well,
it's close. Concurrent. I remember. It's
okay. Yeah. I thought we said it was before.
It's before, not long before.
Okay.
And so, just to me, it doesn't make sense that he would have big plans for Odium, because Odium's a big player in Stormlight Archive. This is coming out before Book 4 of Stormlight Archive. If it turns out to be Odium, this sort of isn't fair, because this is sort of
it's
metagame.
Came out before Book 3.
Yeah,
so.
It's metagaming, and so I don't think it's him. And Trell's modus operandi here doesn't fit with how Odium tends to do things. Odium's about passion.
And Trell seems much more dispassionate.
Well, and that leads to what I think Trell... Some people have theorized autonomy, because what Trell's doing and what Bleeder talks about a bunch is freeing people from harmony and all this other stuff.
Being controlled.
And we do know autonomy's willing to meddle. It was talked about in... I think it was Oathbringer, actually, in one of the letters, I believe.
Okay.
And so, autonomy's on what's it called? Taldane, the White Sands planet.
Okay.
I think it's a completely different shard, and I think the shard's name is something like Logic. The people who follow Trell are the Set, and they have ranks like Sequence and Array, and they're doing horrible experiments.
It's very, very mathematical.
Yeah, it feels very pure mad scientist, where it's science for science's sake and morals be damned, because it gets in the way. And so I think it's a completely different shard that we're seeing here, and it feels right up the idea of Logic's Owl. And we haven't seen a shard that sort of reflects that aspect of Adenalcium yet. Now, there's tons of, like, we've been introduced to, I think, only like 9 shards in total.
2, 3, 4.
I think you're right. I can't remember.
8, 9. I see 10 in our list here.
Okay.
But that's one's in Threnody, and I don't know that we really know much about that one.
We know it's Ambition, but...
Yeah, but we don't know much about it.
Yeah.
So, anyway,
so,
it's counted.
That's my logic of what's going on. I think it's Logic, or something akin to Logic. But if it turns out to be Autonomy, cool.
Yeah. See, I was doing a shot in the dark. I really had nothing to back it up other than a random.
Well, and Red, he likes Red. Whatever this guy is, Odium likes Red.
Yeah.
Right.
So
I don't know.
All I know
I have not been great at guessing things, so I wouldn't be surprised if I was wrong.
No, but anyway. It's interesting, and it's a concept that we haven't seen Brandon do. Odium was always the boogeyman in the Stormlight Archive.
Right.
And so we weren't unaware of Odium's presence. It was something we've been waiting for Odium to show up for a while. Because of various what's the word I'm looking for? Prefaces in Stormlight Archive, the chapter headings.
The epigrams.
Epigrams, that's the word I'm looking for. Which sounds delicious, but yeah, because they name dropped him a couple of times and talked about how he's the one that shattered the two shards on Cell
and
Skaze.
Yeah. Skaze.
And you just start going, and it's like, oh, and Ambition, and you're just like, this guy sounds horrible. So those are things that happened in the past, so we kept waiting for Odium to show up. This is something different where Sazed doesn't know what it is.
Right.
And Sazed's not only, twice over a shard. He's also got, he's got his copper binds. And Bill's going to blow up in a second.
Don't worry about it.
Oh, okay. Well, you're that way. Okay, I'll be fine.
I'll be fine. I'm in a totally different city.
Yeah, you're going to be great.
Anyway.
But yeah, and so it's this mystery. It's not a horror movie like, Freddy versus Jason where you're waiting for the thing to come and get you. This is something more akin to like Alien, where you don't know what it is, but you know it's there and it's trying to do stuff to you that you will not appreciate.
It's not a thriller, it's a suspense.
Yeah, and so they still don't know who Trell is, what his goals are. It's this alien thing. Mm-hmm. And you don't know, and that's what makes it so scary.
It's like Alfred Hitchcock was once asked what the difference between an action movie and a suspense movie is. He said, an action movie is when somebody puts a bomb under the table and it explodes. A suspense movie is when somebody puts a bomb under the table and it doesn't explode. And it's just because you don't know what's happening. You don't know what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
So
I need this fourth book, man.
All right, well, we should go ahead and move on. All right, so at this point, we, of course, want to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to keep creating new episodes. The show will continue to be free for everybody, but if you want to support us, even with just a buck or two each episode, please go to patreon.com/Cosmere Studies. When you become a patron, you get immediate access to our Discord channel, where we've got a budding community of great people. Shout out to y'all. On Discord, you can continue the discussion about the Cosmere and the show itself. You also get bonus content like the 6-7, which is a collection of 7 pieces of content that we find each week and we want to share with you.
And this week are some really good ones.
We've got some really good ones this week, it's true. You also get early access to any bonus content that we produce. But beyond that, our patrons automatically are entered into our giveaways. Right now, we've mentioned already that we're stepping back from the giveaways until we cross back the threshold into our Patreon goal. And to clarify, those giveaways aren't exclusive to patrons. They are free to enter, and the patrons will just be entered automatically. And of course, you help us to make the show and improve the quality of our episodes. As we get more patrons, we're going to be hopefully going to be able to start recording episodes more frequently, and we will be able to invest in better equipment to improve the audio and video quality for our listeners and viewers, so that you're not going to be hearing clipping and robotics and loudness. Yeah, that was smooth.
Stuff.
It's okay. We can edit it in post, or don't. It's better that way.
Also, as we get more patrons, maybe I'll be able to talk more clear. I don't know. So
sure, I think it's a sympathetic thing.
Yeah, that's how it works, right? Science.
Yeah, that's
totally.
Yeah, science. That's a good argument.
All right, well, let's move on to an email. From time to time, we do get questions from our listeners about the Cosmere and other topics, and we like to address them during the show when possible. This week, we've got an email from Blaze. Jordan, you want to go ahead and read that? Do you have the...
I don't have it up, sorry.
You don't have it up? I can read it.
You can read it? Yeah, go ahead.
I've got it. I've got 2 screens, so I do that.
Ooh.
So, yeah. So, hey guys, this is something I've never gotten a good answer on. Given that harmony is both preservation and ruin, and it's been established that together they can create life, is it possible that harmony has the power to repair shattered shards of Adonalsium? And if that's possible, doesn't that create a firm possibility that harmony could become Adonalsium at the end of the Cosmere?
So what do y'all think?
I think no.
I think maybe, but I don't know the rules regarding shards and all of that as well.
Right.
Because I'm still dipping my toes into all the craziness.
While he has the power to create life, that doesn't necessarily mean he has the power to heal himself or whatever he's a part of. That said, I wouldn't be like... I could definitely be convinced that Sazed/Harmony will eventually step into the role of Adonalsium in the end. I don't think we have enough information right now to say whether that will or won't happen. But I do see it as plausible.
I see that as plausible. I think it's completely separate from the fact that he's Harmony.
Yes.
Because we don't really even understand what a shattering is of a shard, what that entails.
Splintering.
Splintering of a shard really entails as far as quote unquote repairing it. But the shards have intent to them, and there seems to be some level of they are trying to come back together in some way, shape, or form. And so
for example, ruin and preservation are now... They are not ruin and preservation, both held by Sazed. They are harmony.
Yeah, that was a word of Brandon where someone asked, does he drop the 2 or just 1? He now drops a harmony shard.
Right.
And although that sounds like something from a Kirby game, I don't know. But the thing that's interesting about that question is, while he has the power to create life, what is a shard? A shard isn't simply life. It is this thing that permeates all 3 realms and is much bigger than just creating a single race, which is what ruin and preservation sort of did on their planet.
Yeah. And didn't the other shards all create their own version of life, or some of them did create their own version of life, or adapted to life?
Some did, some sort of adapted it. I know that on Threnody, there were humans there before
Ambition.
Before Ambition showed up.
Okay, and they just got adapted or changed, maybe.
Yeah, in fact, I think that Scadrial is actually more the exception.
Is it? Okay.
Because they actually created Scadrial from nothing. Ruin and preservation.
Oh, because they wanted to mess with the metals.
Yeah, so they created a whole new planet, and then they put life on it.
And so my final answer is I don't think it has anything to do with Harmony's power. I don't think because he's Harmony he can repair these things. That said, I don't think that's mutually exclusive from he could find a way to take up the power, because I think the power over time wants to coalesce anyway.
Well, we know that if there's a personality behind the shard that's been splintered, and if there isn't a personality, it sort of grows its own consciousness. That's what happened on Cell with Dominion and Devotion, is they sort of merged together into the door and created their own sort of new consciousness behind it. And so, they but I don't think that means that they necessarily have the ability to heal other shards. I feel like the shards will heal over time on their own.
But it would just be cosmic time frames.
Exactly. So we're talking we're talking in a huge time frame. That's my take on it.
Yeah, and luckily for the purposes of the story, Brandon can time skip as far as he wants. So,
yep.
By
that
the
said,
end, you were saying.
That said, he does have a wiki sort of keeping him on track, and he does have a person on his team who is keeping him on track and keeping track of the timeline. So he doesn't have full reign, but he has pretty good flexibility there.
All we know is all it takes is one vacation for Brandon to go rogue and just invent a whole nother era of another book. So
it's true.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Blaze, for writing in. We really appreciate hearing from our listeners. If you have questions or feedback for us, we'd love to hear it. Let us know what you think of the show, what your favorite moments from the Cosmere have been, what topics you've been dying to know more about, what you've been discussing with your friends, what crazy ideas have y'all come up with. We want to hear it. What aspects of the book that we've already discussed do you wish that we had talked about more? Is there something in an upcoming book that you want to make sure that we don't leave out? What Cosmere theories or questions are driving you crazy as we wait for more books from Brandon? We want to hear all of it. So email us at cosmerestudies@gmail.com, and we just might read and discuss your email in an upcoming episode. Now, outside of the Sandersonian Institute, we all have our own personal projects. Jordan, where can we find your work outside of the show?
The best spot is still twitch.tv/splicestream, or you can follow me, Splicestream, on Twitter, or the real Splicestream on Instagram. I'm still doing amiibo content. With the new Smash Brothers getting ready to come out, I am in full-blown hysteria mode, and the only thing that could make it better is more people.
And Diablo and Smash.
And Diablo and Smash, of course. Because who doesn't want the literal devil fighting a dog secretary from Animal Crossing?
What?
These are the things we get with Smash.
I'm so out of the loop with Smash now.
It's not outside the realm of possibility either.
No, it's not.
All right, Amy, where can we find your outside projects?
So I am on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. On Facebook, I'm Coincidence Cosplay and Props. On Twitter, I'm at Coincidence Cosp because the name is too long. On Instagram, I'm at Coincidence_Cosplay, and I also have a coffee page. But if you really wanted to support me financially, just randomly, then you can look on my Facebook or any of those, and it should have a link to that. So. And there's that. And I've been doing more like personal projects that aren't cosplay related. I made 2 pillow covers. I made one that was Hufflepuff and one that was Star Wars. I couldn't find Transformers for my poor husband. And I made myself a dress because I need more things to wear on Sundays. And let's see. Oh, and I'm finally cut out a new pattern. I traced the pattern for the Nazgul cloak so I can make that.
Nazgul.
Yeah, I found it's called tobacco cloth, and I'm going to layer that over some black cotton so it'll have that like ripped, ragged, linen-y feel to it. So I'm hoping it turns out.
Linen-y fresh.
Linen-y, yes. Ragged.
Very cool. And of course, when I'm not here, I am writing board game reviews over at the Innkeeper's Table at www.innkeeperstable.com. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Innkeeper's Table. I actually am kind of excited because I just kickstarted a game and I spent way too much money on it, but I'm really, really excited because, oh my gosh, it's pretty. It's called Tidal Blades, Heroes of the Reef, and it's coming out in about a year, and I'm really excited because I backed like the super deluxe version with the expansion, and yeah. So that's basically the majority of my board game budget for the year, except for this weekend. There is a giant used board game sale going on in a little bit north of me, and I will be going to that and spending ridiculous amounts of money on board games, and then driving to family for Thanksgiving. So yay.
In other news, Bill will be eating nothing but peanut butter until such time as Thanksgiving because he has to save up money for all these board games he's going to buy.
I eat nothing but peanut butter anyway. What are you talking about?
Apparently, your dietary habits.
To our listeners, if you have enjoyed the show, please go over to iTunes and give us a 5-star review. It makes a huge difference to us to bring in new listeners. next to becoming a patron. It's actually the best way to support us. Just sharing the show with other people who enjoy Brandon Sanderson, who might enjoy our podcast, even people who just enjoy podcasts in general. Let them know about us, and so that they can check us out, and maybe let them find out about Brandon Sanderson, because guys, he's a good writer. I don't know if you've picked up on it, but we kind of like his work.
Just a smidge.
And the other benefit is, if you get a friend who, maybe the friend has only read, say, 2 of the books in the Stormlight Archive, or they're missing something in the Sandersonian era, they start listening to us, they have to read. Because otherwise they're going to get spoiled. We are your poison pill to getting them to finally finish stuff.
I don't know that that's really a tagline. We are your poison pill.
I mean, it could be an episode title, but...
Jordan.
You're reaching there.
That's okay. I stretched before the stream, so I'm not going to pull anything.
All right, guys. Well, before we close the episode, Amy and Jordan, do you have any final thoughts about anything we've talked about tonight?
So the one random scene with Marasi that I really liked was they were going for it's towards the end of the big fight, and Marasi ends up not having a carriage available, and the constable's uniform for women is a skirt, and so she has to ride a horse. And I love it. She's just like, fine, I'm gonna suck it up and do it. And so she gets on the horse, and part of her leg is exposed because you gotta cover yourself because you don't want to sit with just yourself. And
it's so scandalous.
And
that sexy ankle.
There's a little bit worried about it. And she's like, "Well, what am I supposed to do?" And then she's like, "I gotta make sure we get pants because this is cold."
Well, I love that she's acting tough and no, this is no big deal, but
no big deal. I can do it. It's fine.
Internally, she's like, I am so glad it's dark outside because I know I blush. And
she's like, I blushed like crazy. I'm glad no one can.
Yep.
That scene was amazing. I guess my final thought is more just production on the fly. Do we just want to next episode go into Bands of Mourning, or do we have more for Shadows of Self?
I think we're okay to move into Bands of Mourning because I don't really have much left for this one.
I think so as well.
This is a sad book.
I want to move on personally.
Plus, there's so much in Bands of Mourning that I want to talk about.
So yeah, if you haven't read Bands of Mourning, you got 2 weeks. You're on the clock. Go.
Get on it.
Go. Oh boy. And I guess for myself, I don't have anything really to add about what we've talked about, but just as a reminder, Skyward, check it out. Seriously, I'm enjoying it so far, and it's
how far are you?
Worth reading. I'm only that far.
That's not that far.
Not too far.
But I'm enjoying it so far. He's done a really good setup for characters and setting, and I'm really looking forward to diving deep into this.
Yeah, I need to go pick that one up.
Now I have to get through Bands of Mourning as well, so yay. So double Brandon Sanderson this week. All right.
All the way across the sky.
What does it mean?
What does it mean?
Oh no, what did I do? All right. Well, so I stuttering is over. Okay, we'll edit that out in post. In addition to the live episodes of the show that stream on twitch.tv/innkeeperstable every 2 weeks on Monday nights at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, our listeners can find our videos on YouTube or the audio versions of the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and just about any other service that carries podcasts by searching for Cosmere Studies. You can also follow us and contact us through Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under the profile @Cosmere Studies. That's all we've got for this week's episode of the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies. But in 2 weeks, on November 26th, we are going to be diving into Bands of Mourning. In the meantime, on behalf of Amy, Jordan, and myself, thanks for listening. And remember,
there's always another secret.
Nailed it.
We'll see.
Someday.